and I might want to do something else. And very unexpectedly, this opportunity here in Nacogdoches came to become a chamber, and I had to dismantle a business that I had for 25 years in a period of 20 days. Many of my clients were retainer clients, which meant for literally 2 decades, many of them were writing me checks every month to have my services available to them in public policy or running nonprofit associations, or I did a lot of strategic planning for organizations. It was what I learned from that experience, and the reason that I suggested this session is that I wish I had been taught that the day I started Broadcom, I should have started figuring out what Plan B was in my life, because this opportunity wasn't going to be around forever. I clearly wanted to do it, have all sorts of compelling reasons to want to do it, don't have a day of regret. But if I'd been smarter, I could have cashed out in that business a lot better than I did. It was a fire sale in a sense, and truthfully, honestly, it was a dismantling of the business. I call it a transition, but for me personally, it was a painful transition. And I don't know about you folks, but I tend to learn more from the things in life that don't go well than the things that do go well. I don't celebrate a lot of successes, but I sure do mourn the losses, and that's the reason I think for all of us, I don't care if you're just starting the business or you've been in business for 20 years or 30 years, we all should have a plan B. And in the chamber, we try to make sure we have a succession plan. Wayne someday will leave the chamber, and how painful that transition will be, and that's the key word here today, transition, will depend greatly on how much we plan. There's issues like professional development, forecasting ahead what the trends are. How can we reinvent or sustain ourselves in the future? My business, sadly, was too dependent on Wayne Mitchell. And when Wayne left, the core clients left. And that's not a good thing. So when you go to market a business and say, well, what am I buying for a client base? They're all going to somebody else that they have a relationship, and we lose Wayne Mitchell. So the good news for all of you are there are folks far better equipped on this panel to talk about the transitions in business succession than I am. We're pleased to have Clayton Collier on my left here. He's with Hydrex Environmental, and he'll talk about that rather large company's transitions. On my far right, we have David Norton. David owns a very successful business that's on North Street, Pies, and he'll talk about the marketing efforts and the transitions he's been facing. And I'm going to ask each of the panelists to introduce themselves. And certainly last but not least, 2 folks I've had the pleasure of working with. I've worked with all these folks for a period of time, but David and Teresa Darby, who own Glass Castles, that are going through a transition. I don't mind them telling. I don't think they'll mind me saying I attended their retirement party the other night. And so they all have transition stories to talk about. I will ask each of our panelists to kind of do an introduction and talk about transitions that they're experiencing, and then I will have a series of questions that I'd like to pose to them, and we'll leave an accommodation for you folks at the conclusion to Q&A. So why don't we start with David and Teresa on my right, and talk a little about Glass Castles and the transition.
Well, we decided a long time ago that living in Nacogdoches with what we do, the town was basically too small to really support a stained glass business. Nobody's got to eat any stained glass. So we needed to be a regional kind of business that sold all over the area. So we also knew that stained glass might not survive, so we started a gift shop. And that was part of diversifying, such that we knew that if we were going to retire out of this business, which at that time was about 35 years ago, we knew we needed something to sell. And David and Teresa were going to go away. So that part wasn't going to sell well. Give us a bunch of money. That doesn't sell. So we started a gift shop. And the gift shop kind of grew, and it's basically taken over a third. And we manufacture stained glass windows. So we have 3 stores, really. what we say. But the point is that you have to have something to sell that is, whether it's a material thing or whatever, because you're going to go away. So, what do you have to sell? In our case, it is hard glass. It is hard gifts, you might say. So it has value on its own. But the number one thing you've got is a reputation. And you've got to keep that going as a good reputation within your business. And if you're going away, you've got to be able to say, okay, John, Linda, whoever is going to be able to help you as a new owner to take this over. So if your reputation is sour because you haven't treated people right, I think that's a big part of succession. If people trust you, they believe you can do the work, you're going to do it on time, and they feel like your successors, whether it's actually them or your employees, know how to do the job, and they can manage your employees or however they're going to do that kind of thing. They've got to believe in you. And I feel like that's a big part of what made the city of Nacogdoches decide we were a legacy business that needed to stay in business, after we were gone. So you have to start early and look at your business and say, what am I going to do with it in terms of handing it off to somebody else? What is the value in it? If you need to diversify into some other aspect of things, you need to think of that early so that you've got it kind of going. And, keep yourself clean, pay your sales tax. I mean, that kind of thing. It's easy to get caught up in, I need the money to pay this bill. Well, when I was really young, I used to run around as a news reporter and watch Bob Bullock padlock businesses. And that's no good. So you've got to keep yourself straight in that kind of thing. Keep the sales tax money separate so that you don't get in trouble from the backside, you might say, and you're not expecting it. But anyway, just keep your name in good shape with what you do. Do it the best you can, and people will want to take that business over. Yeah, location is important, but maybe you just do something you can be on a back street, and that's okay. But in our case, we moved from North Street to Main Street, and it was a big help to us. We were renting on North Street. We bought on Main Street. So we had something else to sell, a physical building. That helped us to get to retirement. We knew that was an asset we could, turn over. And that's helping us. So what do you have to say, Teresa?
He gives homilies in churches, so you can talk a lot to him. He said one of the things I wanted to say, and that was that we started planning on selling our business probably 30 years ago. And so we've groomed our business this whole time with the concept that we wanted to be able to have the business stay and be established, to be able to let somebody else enjoy what we've been able to enjoy. So that's the main thing I was going to bring up.
Can't start in five years before you retire.
That's the best.
Go ahead.
Hi, I'm Dave Norch. I own pies, frozen custard, and yogurt bar here. And one thing that I do want to comment on, Wayne, is there's really two different kinds of transactions. There's the traditional sales, and then there's the relationship sales. And that relationship stuff is really key. People come in and, they want to feel special. They come into the store like, hey, how's it going? And, and they tell you about their kids or their grandkids or, how they're doing at school. And I think that it's kind of like that Cheers effect, a Norm coming in, hey, Sammy, it's just, you feel nice there. And so if you have that kind of business, or even if you're doing, plumbing or electrical, if you're going in and being considerate to people and, kind of talking a little bit, just to kind of warm up the conversation. They have a good feeling about you. They're going to recommend you, as long as you're doing a good job and stuff. So I think that's really key. to develop that, especially when you're starting out. Other than, I know this probably includes the business plan, but the key things about a business plan are what these guys are saying. Is like, you're going into it, do you have the money for the equipment you need? Do you have money for the product that you're going to sell, supplies, things like that? Plus, are you going to make your note? Do you have a couple of, probably 6 months to a year of cushion in there? Do you expect people to come in and pay money for your product versus maybe other people in town? You want to have that cash flow in. What do you need to support? Do you need to support yourself? Do you need to support the family? How much money are you going to need? And those are all wonderful things when they all work out. But your idea of what may work in a certain area or city might not work in another area. It may. I'm one of those people where I just think it's going to work, so I'm going for it. Sometimes it's bit me in the butt, sometimes it's not. But I just have a vision, and there's no stopping me, good or bad, which is kind of terrible sometimes. But I don't know, I get excited with that stuff. But other than the cash flow, it's kind of like when you have the business, you got to think about the beginning and the end. And what these guys are saying is what kind of exit strategy you have. Because you never know what's going to happen. Someone could die, you might have to move away somewhere. You don't know. And so if you have a plan where you can get out of that business, that's a valuable thing. How much money can you get out of it? Nice thing is with the internet and things like that, you could sell a lot of your product easier than you probably could a long time ago. But these are all really important things that I would really consider when going into a business. Things about NAC, if you're going to build a business here, I think SFA is key. Whatever Stephen F. Austin is in session, my business goes up. When they're not here over Christmas and in the summer, it kind of goes down a little bit. So they're really key for my business. They also provide employees that do a pretty good job. NAC is kind of a little fickle in that it doesn't have a lot of disposable income. So one of the things is that people kind of have that idea, I'll let other people test it out, and then if it's still there 6 months or a year, I'll go check it out, or if I hear my friends do it. So you really want to promote it. You really want to make sure that those initial customers, when they come in, that they're really well taken care of and that they enjoy their time at your facility, or if you provide a service fixing their whatever, make sure you do a good job and take them further business. Let's see. One thing that with my business, I have pies, yogurt, frozen custard, and yogurt. And most people like yogurt, most people know what they are. That is, I like custard. I grew up in the north, and I have friends that have custard stands, and in the summer, people are all over those places. It's lines. You can see Andy's in Tyler. There's people, it looks like a rock concert on the weekends in the summertime. So I'm thinking, nobody does that here, So I started the custard thing with the yogurt. But here, people don't really know what custard is. They think of custard as like a creamy pudding or something. And so it hasn't really taken off like it would probably in other big places. So I'm sure if I was here for another 5 or 10 years, that would really roll and continue to grow. But I'm not, because my son is graduating from high school, and so I'm moving off to Dallas. So that's why this exit strategy thing comes into play, because now I'm going to go to Dallas. So how do I do that? So, but just custard you know, I put custard out there, and I thought people would be generally excited about it because people really seem to like Andes. Well, I put, yeah. And so I put, you know, so it was kind of slow, and so I put like an ice cream mural on my window. And all of a sudden people were coming in, hey, I want to try your ice cream. You know, I just called the custard ice cream. It's basically creamy ice cream. And that really improved my business, just wording it differently, you know, something that this community would understand, you know. So it's the little things that can make a big difference. How much time do I have? I have another page.
Oh, wait, hold just a second. We'll transition over to Clayton for just a second.
Okay.
But, because we are going to be anxious to hear about, you know, what you've experienced in terms of marketing the business.
That's next.
So, that would be great. Clayton?
Yeah, Clayton Collier with Hydrex Environmental. I'm the general manager and majority stockholder. My dad started the company 25 years ago, and we transitioned, and I bought the company from him almost 3 years ago. So there was some fun things to learn through that transition. Hydrex, we provide services. We provide environmental consulting. I get into conversations all the time about what that means, and there's a wide variety of environmental services that we offer, but anything to deal with groundwater contamination, soil contamination, any kind of environmental assessment prior to purchasing a commercial piece of property, you know, just a background check. I mostly deal with wetlands and delineating and permitting impacts to wetlands. If a company cannot avoid wetlands, then I take them through the nasty Corps of Engineers permitting process. So environmental consulting is a lot of different things, but we also started a drone division 4 years ago, and it's fun to talk about. If you know me, I'm always talking about drones and wetlands. But anyways, the drones was using cutting edge technology. We were able to do our own aerial mapping, leak detection, thermal imaging, and you can do volumetric calculations. You can fly a piece of property and get a topographic model of it. It's pretty neat. And so that's still only about 10%, less than 10% of our business, but it's fun to talk about. I get my foot in the door with customers all the time, or at least get them talking about just drones and cutting edge technology. So innovation's been a big part of our business. But Dad started the company, Glenn Collier. He was in 1994 because of changes in environmental regulations regarding landfills. So they started requiring liners and groundwater monitoring systems, and it was things that he was already knowledgeable about as a geologist. And so he started Hydrex, and I started there about a year later, and I was in eighth grade or something like that, and I remember kicking people in the shins and working in the shop and kind of probably being annoying. But so it's kind of come a long ways. I grew up in the business. You know, it took a long time for me personally to determine if I had an interest in continuing with the business, but as I kind of grew up in it, went to school for environmental science, and Dad's a geologist, does subsurface work, and I'm an environmental scientist, and I do kind of above ground work is how we like to look at it, so surface water and those kind of things. So we've grown the business from, you know, started out with 4 employees to now we're 26 employees. And so that's a lot of people to deal with. And then from the ownership side, that is a lot of administrative things and personnel issues that are not my favorite to deal with. But anyways, it's fine. It's just that those personnel issue can be like distracting for a whole week. So those are not my favorite, but I love what I do. And so it made sense for this transition to happen. I do have a business partner who's been at the company for 20 years. So we've all worked together with my dad for a long time. And we had a strategy that I was purchasing a small percentage of the company every year. And this was going to drag out to be about a 10 or plus year ordeal. And we were about 3 or 4 years into that. I think it was going to be longer than that. And Dad just said, you know, we need to speed this up. We need a better direction and a quicker transition, which is better for all parties, not just him as the previous business owner, getting paid for his, 22 years of building this business, and not just for me and my business partner and the benefits that we get, but also for the employees, because they need to see that this company a lot of our clients we've been working for 2 decades, and so they need to see that from the customer side, and our employees need to see that we have good direction, good leadership, and a plan. And so that was key. And a little over 2.5 years ago, we implemented that plan, and it was pretty smooth. Other than, don't point out the negatives, but I will say one thing that we did not do well was to his leadership. He didn't retire, and he hates getting asked, has he retired yet? Or when's he going to retire? Good thing for him, he's able to slow down and work a little less. We still have some big projects and clients that want him involved. And so he wasn't ready to retire, but employees didn't really grasp what that part of the plan was. Sure, Glenn's still around and he's still got the big office and still has a major presence, but who was their direct boss, right? And who do they really prioritize what comes out of their mouth? Who should I do what right before? So that was something that we would have learned. I would have better directed my employees that this is still one of my top 3 people at the company for sure, with all the world and knowledge and everything like that. So we could have done that better, and that was the major thing that we learned. The rest of it was we had a good plan. I met with, of course, attorneys. We put together a package or an agreement that covered a lot of things that I never even thought about. But anyways, we had a long-term plan with a small percentage each year. We switched that over to a complete buyout. It was just more of an immediate thing, and my ownership went from trickling in percentage to a set percentage, and so it was a transition that worked out better for all parties, just because we had kind of a finish line closer than really dragging it out, and who knows what could happen in 5 or 10 years, right? And so that was kind of an overview of our transition.
Well, why don't I start with you? One of the things you talked about was the succession. What would have been your father's plans had you not decided to go into business?
That's a good point. We have been approached several times, especially in latter years, by bigger companies, bigger engineering firms. And I also had an interest in that, right? Because I was already gaining some ownership in the company. So, we talked about that internally. What would that move look like, and what it would look like from one of these bigger engineering firms that they want to add the environmental piece to theirs. We're also a registered professional engineering firm, but we're not designing big landfill projects and big road infrastructure, so we play a different part of that, mostly environmental. And anyways, what that would have looked like would have been they probably would have held on to us as managers, owners, or managers for a certain period of time, but their interest in having a Nacogdoches office would probably be pretty low. And so had we sold to an outside firm or a bigger firm, we wouldn't think the Nacogdoches office would last more than a few years, which is, we have 25, 26 employees with families, and they want to live here. We hire people that want to be in Nacogdoches, not the ones that are just gonna, that want to be elsewhere. So that, had I not had the opportunity, then it would be a struggle to find somebody that you can trust with the business and trust how it's marketed and how clients are dealt with. And so I don't know what the other plan would have been. He didn't tell me if he had another plan, but it wouldn't have been as lucrative, I don't think, for the employees or even our clients.
And we're fortunate, by the way, that it's going the way it is because of your commitment and passion to the area, but you can see from our economic development standpoint, a business without a succession plan is a business at risk for our community, because it could be anywhere. And that's one of the reasons I think we learn the hard way sometimes, that some of us just don't do that. David, your thoughts about the transition of your business to the next step?
As far as, what's going to happen with it, or?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I have ovens in the store, and so I thought there would be a good place for people to, maybe make cookies. That would probably been my next avenue, is maybe cookies or some kind of muffins or cupcakes or something like that, and then hopefully try to get something online. It didn't happen. There wasn't people looking for that right now, and so I just found someone that is coming in and just going to buy all the equipment, and move it to Lufkin and start a yogurt place there. So that's what's happening with that. But that's one of the deals is my exit strategy really wasn't really probably as well thought out as it should have been. And so, it just came time where my lease was running out. Do I renew, or do I go? And I just decided probably about 4 or 5 months ago that I'm going. So it really didn't give me a lot of time to get that out there. So that's why I think that's such an important thing.
Teresa and David?
Our transition is that Nacogdoches is used to having glass castles. We've done a whole lot in the community with the schools, with the Convention and Visitors Bureau, and the Chamber. And so they have a real desire to help us keep Glass Castle's business alive and thriving. And so that has helped an amazing amount. I'm just listening. I'm going to take a little bit of my 5 minutes I didn't take before. I'm realizing that we have 3 really different businesses here. David and I started ours, out of our home in Houston, moved up to a little spot up here on North Street, moved to downtown. Dave bought an existing business, Clayton's working with his second generation business. So it's just interesting to have 3 different, really different perspectives. This is our baby, literally, that we started. And so we're dealing with it a little bit differently. But the exit strategy for us also means that preserving what Nacogdoches is already used. And so that's been a real blessing, because the CVB, the Chamber, and NEDCO and Main Street program here downtown has been very interested in helping us make this transition happen for the benefit of the town. And that's awesome that we've had the kind of business that they want to even help do that. We have an incredible building. There's a lot of people who just like the building. So like that, it's just, it's been helpful to have that transition, but also it's kind of neat to know that we will be hopefully having somebody keep the tires on the truck the same as we've built, so that when we want to go back in and finish the stained glass lamps that we started and never got to finish.
Teresa, how do you ensure that the woman or man who acquires your business will have the passion and the skill set or expertise in order to continue, especially as it relates to the unique work you do with stained glass?
Okay, y'all. We're trusting in God. And I mean, I know that sounds trite to people who aren't Christians, but we really have been, there's just been a lot of prayer for us, which is an awesome, amazing part of this town. And the person that's in front of us now, even when we hear things that other people don't think are positive, we instead are really understanding that it is the positive. The fellow that is possibly going to buy this business has absolutely no stained glass experience. So that's pretty bizarre that we'd be selling to somebody who doesn't. But what we are doing is mentoring that person into the business, so that when he gets the keys to the door, we are not out the door. We are helping him, teaching him, and he is interested in learning that. So somebody said he's like a sponge. Well, what could we want more than a sponge that's willing to soak up all of our knowledge? And so, and we're not leaving town. So we'll be around and are offering to, help him. We've always given away our secrets. We have never had secrets. So we're not going to keep secrets from this guy. We want him to succeed. And so I think that's been what's really interesting. We can see his desire. We have heard his passion, and we've watched him just really want to do this. So those 3 traits, you can't train that anyway.
David, in your transition, you made a strong point about the importance of continuity as you went through that process, reporting requirements, who's in charge, and you said, you kind of adjusted that plan a couple of years into it. How important was that to the continued success of Hydrex?
Just directly kind of reinstating that who was in charge, and well, it was very important. One, just for, morale of the company, and my dad just wanted to make sure that he was still a needed part of the entity, and very much so. And so that was important just for the team. It didn't derail us much. You could just see a little friction every once in a while, and that could have been just stated better up front.
Well, with any transition, that's part of the deal. I found out a long time ago that you're going to have that type of friction. It looks like you guys, the important thing was you went back, developed a strong strategy, and implemented it.
There weren't too many things that kind of just snuck up on us. So a good plan and things that I never would have thought about. So again, hiring an attorney that deals with that type of thing was business transactions was the key, because there were still a few things that kind of slipped through the cracks, but nothing major. And there's small things that probably cost us a little bit more money, but we're able to overcome and continue on. And luckily, we were really so busy that when we transitioned to ownership, it was literally like May, and this was January 1, and it was May or June before we could even take a breath and say, okay, what were some of those administrative things that we needed to make sure we did this year? And then it was, so anyways, even having a really good plan, there was just some unknowns. So being as prepared as you can be for any type of transition, because there are always going to be a few little things.
And I don't mind admitting that my failure in the transition in my own business was I had a plan B, but I didn't realize I needed a plan C. And I don't mean that in a humorous way, is that my plan B, frankly, was, was going to be a family succession. My son was going to take the business over. But I never realized that a client would step in, offer him twice what I was paying him, and he was gone. And all of a sudden I was sitting there saying, okay, what do we do? At the same time, I got to service the clients, so what did I do? I went back to my comfort zone, service the clients and worry about that later, and later came faster than I thought. I should have had another woman or man being groomed to be that person that was, and it just didn't work out. So I do think it makes the point you do have to have a contingency plan in this, I'm going to go home and lose sleep tonight as a result of this. Joking. I love the chamber, so it was a wonderful move. David, going through what you've gone through in terms of the liquidation and the sale of the business, what do you think is the biggest learning lesson you've gone through?
Well, the main things were, cash flow. What am I looking at in the beginning? making all the payments, sales tax, things like that, and then, an exit strategy. Even though you don't plan on it, things just pop up in life that are, just happen. Marketing is a key thing, understanding your community. Just a little thing like changing it from custard, putting ice cream mural on my window makes a big difference, what kind of things, it's hard nowadays, because a lot of people don't read the paper, they read things online. How do you market your business, effectively and with, with little cost as possible, and
He dances outside.
whenever I don't have anybody in the store, I just go outside by the road, because I'm right on North Street, and I have this ice cream sign, and I'm just out there, and I listen to music, and I'm just kind of dancing around, and people think I'm really weird, but what I want to do is just put it in their head, someday, if you want to go for a treat, hey, what about that dancing guy across from Kroger, And so, they may not come today, but they may come tomorrow. So that's why I do that. Do you want me to talk a little bit about marketing?
We're gonna come back, I wanna make sure we have some time for Q&A for the audience here, so we'll come back to that in just a second. Your biggest lesson in this process?
Oh, just start early. I mean, that's number one. Have something that's of value to the people. Like David said, get your customers to love you. We're multi-generational in terms of customers coming back. We have people that bring their kids in, and all of a sudden it's their grandkids and whatnot, and they got to come to Glass Castle. So we made ourselves a tourist destination of its own in a fashion. Go see those guys and how they do it, kind of thing. And anyway, it's kind of evolved, but it helped to make it to the point that the city and county loved us enough that they wanted to help us in our marketing of Glass Castle. So that made it a whole lot easier. And it does rush up on you before you're really ready. I mean, one day I'm perfectly fine, the next I've got a sciatica back there that's hurting because I lean over a table. So, the body's kind of giving out in a fashion, and all of a sudden, hey, you need to retire. Oh, well, I'm not really ready. I got all this pile of work. But, so it does rush at you, and be ready for it, I guess.
Anything to add?
Well, things have worked out where we are actually able to sell this business where we have a huge demand. So the person who takes this business already has lots of work. And that's cool. We're not getting out of it because we don't have anything to do. So the future for somebody else looks really bright.
David, biggest lesson learned in this process?
I think I already went over the biggest lesson learned. No, I don't really have any.
What I loved about all of you is you're all so innovative. I mean, you're adding drones to the mix of your business services and whatnot. You folks I know have gone out and actually repaired stained glass facilities and thinking. I remember the conversation we had about the name Pies a while back, David, and how that was part of your marketing strategy. It's really kind of cool. I want to spend at least 5 or 10 minutes with Q&A here. Questions of any of our panelists? They're really good. You can't hurt their feelings.
I have a question about how did you go about valuing your business?
That's a tough one for services because we have some contracts, but a lot of the other work, most of our work just comes in the door, and it's hard to keep tabs of what you're going to be doing next month. But we've been doing it for so long that we know we're going to be. We've been blessed with work, and we feel very strongly that we're going to continue to be blessed. So how do you make that a value to a prospective buyer? One way that we've seen in our world is the amount of billing that we do annually for the past 3 years. So an average of the past 3 years times 3. could be one way to value a company like ours.
David?
Yeah, that's, cash flow is always key in what you're making, you know, because you want to make money having a business. I lost my train of thought. Come back to me.
Okay, well, Teresa, maybe?
Well, just keep everything really clean. I mean, bookkeeping is paramount. And so, and y'all have already been to sessions where you keep hearing the word SBDC, Small Business Development Center, Small Business Development Center, Small Business Development Center. I mean, you always hear the word location, location, location. So just SBDC, SBDC, SBDC. So we literally went straight to them and said, you know, we have a relationship with a fellow that's actually in the Tyler region. And he's been working with us for 30 of these 37 years. So at any rate, went straight to them and said, help us out. It's time. Help us figure this out.
Extraordinary. Nedco locally here is unbelievable in assisting you folks. The chamber's working with some folks right now very quietly on in a couple of areas where people are contemplating going out and starting new initiatives. And what I love about Angelina County and Nacogdoches is that we all share our resources. And I might introduce Tara, the CEO of the Angelina Lufkin Chamber of Commerce, who's in this room here today. We all are in it for exactly the same reasons as what is good for Angelina County is good for Nacogdoches County. It's not a competition in this thing, and between the two counties, about every resource from financing to developing a business plan. You know, Nedco does an extraordinary job, you know, in attracting new business this area, and they can help you with financing. So there's all the tools available if you're thinking about acquiring a business. One thing I'd suggest, and I think we all would suggest, is don't be starry-eyed about it. I'm one of these people who gets like really infatuated with certain things in my life. Oh, I think I'd like to do that, you know. Then I realize that, no, I can't run a rodeo. Because I don't know how to ride a horse. But you see, I get intrigued by things, and I think, you know, if I had advice, I'd say, you know, go into it heads up. Do your due diligence, study. Talk to people like this. Every time I'm in the presence of folks like you and them, I learn something. So, you know, yes, sir.
I guess I have a question in terms of like what suggestions would y'all have for someone who's trying to get into the business? Do you think it would be easier for someone to start up a business from scratch or get into franchising first?
Well, the beautiful thing about franchising is they have everything, the plan for you, they'll train you, the facilities are all there. I mean, it's a cookie cutter deal. If you're going into a successful franchise, especially if you're a new person, it might not be a bad idea. You know, you hate to pay that extra money, but they have everything there, and it's just probably an easier way to learn the business than to do it all yourself. You can do it depending on the business, but that offers a great way to go if you're new to it.
Just my friend and my friends that have gone into it, the success rate, especially in the restaurant area for franchises, is significantly higher than those that go it alone, because they've done all the marketing and all of the hard lifting in terms of technology and everything has been menu development, things like that. But having said that, there's plenty of examples here locally, both in Lufkin and Nacogdoches, of extraordinary businesses. A lot of them are graduates of Angelina College or SFA that have started businesses here in Nacogdoches and are still here. I think Frogs is one of them. I mean, I could point to a bunch of restaurants downtown that are products of our local education system. So it's interesting.
I've learned in this town, this is a real divided town. People who live here want a franchise, and people who come here to visit want a local. So who's your audience?
Yeah,
Actually, I work at Nichols Sandwich, and that's what my boss did. He worked at Cane's for about 20 years as the head manager or something even higher positioned, and then he left and started his own Nichols Sandwich. So that's also another pathway you could take if you wanted to learn the business first and then start up your own business.
One thing I want to say is, don't think that the SBA and such is just for going at the beginning of your business and at the end. We went in the middle, and he's the one who talked us into coming downtown and buying a business instead of renting. He reviewed everything that we did, and he said, here's how you can do it better. You know, first quit paying rent and start buying something, et cetera, et cetera. So, you know, you may be real successful, but somebody else's input, especially a freebie like the SBA, you know, that's helpful if they want to give you some fresh ideas on how to do it a little bit. So,
Final
use
comment,
them.
David?
Well, one thing I want to comment that, you know, she's got a great idea for you. Because when you're young, you know, everything looks great. I'd like to do that. And I really believe that you should go try to work in that industry for a little bit just to get a feel for it. Because once you have a business, that's your baby now. You're there a lot, and you've got to really kind of enjoy it. Otherwise, you're going to have a miserable life. So make sure that something that you think would be really cool is. And then, you know, invest yourself, I think.
Ladies and gentlemen, can we thank our panel, Dave? We appreciate their